I mean, nobody will say you're not doing your part to keep this genre alive, right? You've definitely done more than that. But the question that a lot of people have, and it seems to bug them, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you as well. Hey guys, welcome to the last part of my interview with Scott Adkins, part 4. Make sure to check out the other 3 parts. I'll link them in the description below. But in this one, we're going to talk about the differences between the action and martial arts films of the 80s and 90s compared to today and why those differences are there. Also, a lot of people wonder this, like, why hasn't Hollywood given Scott Adkins the big shot at like a bigger budget film, right? Now, Scott obviously has done very well for himself. He's a lead in a lot of movies. He's made a living in the film industry over the last 20 years. So he's definitely doing something right. But for whatever reason, Hollywood's just not giving him the big shot. And he definitely put the work in. He's got the skills and experience. So he's going to give us a very honest, real answer about that. And then make sure to stay until the end because he's going to tell us his favorite MMA fighters. And because people associate him with Boyka, would he actually ever do one of these fights, like a celebrity boxing match, for example? And make sure to, guys, check out his new movie, by the way, Accident Man Hitman's Holiday. Really good movie. But make sure you actually pay for it. Don't pirate that movie. We got to support the genre. That's one issue with the genre is because the pirating and, you know, it's a different world out there. And we got to support these, man. Especially when they're a good effort and it's a good movie. So pay for that one.
Why is it different these days? Why is it so difficult to make action films of the quality of what we had in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, if you look at Bloodsport and Kickboxer, they're low budget, I suppose, but they were made in like 7 weeks, 6 weeks. And they had enough budget behind them for them to look good. You know, like Bloodsport looks great. I mean, the cinematographer, a famous cinematographer, directed that, right? So it had a pretty good look to it. It looked better than the sequels anyway. It looked quite polished.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. And Kickboxer, I mean, that's a great looking film. The music's brilliant and all the rest of it. But they had enough time to make those action sequences and tell the story and just make it good. And I think these days, because in those days, you make a film, even if it went on the cinema and didn't make much money, you guaranteed it was going to go on VHS and it was going to make a shed load of money, especially if it was a Van Damme film. And especially if it was like a Van Damme film. That's why he had, you know, all the Law and Avedon films coming out and the No Truth, No Surrenders and films of that ilk, raking it in on VHS, China O'Brien, Cynthia Rothrock, all of that. We don't have that anymore. Once people started torrenting movies, and that income stream from VHS or DVD was gone, it was like, right, we can't mess about now. You're going to have to shoot this film in 3 weeks, 2 weeks if you can. So the budgets have shrank and the schedules have shrank. And it's a little bit easier actually because now we've got digital cameras and the film stuff took longer to sort of set up and the lights, you needed more complicated lights. But essentially, I've come into this business at the time when video's dead, DVD's dead, and I'm having to make my movies on a very short schedule with no money. And it's not easy, man. And not everybody wants to put in the sort of work that I put into it. I put my life and soul into these movies because I really appreciate having the chance to make them and being in this position. And I desperately don't want people to take it away. And I want to give my audience that is loyal to me what they expect from me, which is a lot of action. And it's not easy to do, especially when you're grinding it out. I'm not the crew. Probably the first assistant director probably doesn't like me when I'm filming an action sequence because I'm pushing the crew hard in order to get everyone to move quickly so that we can get the shots that you need for these action sequences. It's not easy, man. And that's why you're not getting the quality of films that you used to get in the 80s and the 90s. But I've been busting my ass trying to keep it alive and bring it back. Well, keep it alive. And I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and you know, I've been critical on some of your films, obviously, but I've always given you credit. You and Michael Jai White, I always say, hey, like, they're the two guys that are basically doing it. And they're doing what so many of us wanted to do because we grew up watching those movies. We got inspired. We took martial arts. We got in the gym. You know, we wanted to be in these movies. We wanted to be like, the character in Kickboxer or Bloodsport or Lionheart, like we wanted to be them in real life, and then it's like, well, at least play him in a movie, maybe, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's difficult. It's not for the faint-hearted. And then the producers ask you to do oh yeah, can we have Accident Man 3, please? But can you
Actually,
make
I
less
want
time
that
for
as a
less money?
fan. Oh, see, that's why you guys all need to watch it, because the more people watch it, the more money it makes. Then you'll get the right budget for Accident
You
Man
need to
3.
watch it, but you need to pay for it.
Yeah, pay for it.
That's the
Exactly.
missing ingredient here. Films are not supposed to be free. If you go to the restaurant and you eat the food and you eat all of it, you clean your plate, and then you say, I didn't like that, so I'm not paying for it. The guy's going to be like, well, you've eaten it. So come on, pay for it. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah. But going back to, I mean, nobody will say you're not doing your part to keep this genre alive, right? You've definitely done more than that. But the question that a lot of people have, and it seems to bug them, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you as well. So obviously you have worked on some bigger Hollywood films like the Doctor Strange, and we're all going to want to see you in John Wick 4, obviously, and then Expendables 2, etc. But why hasn't Hollywood given you that shot where it's like, why can't you be the leading man? Like, why'd they give Jake Gyllenhaal the role in Roadhouse reboot instead of you?
Well, it's I don't know is the short answer. And things have changed. It changed with the Matrix, really. It got to a point where stunt teams got that good that they could train up an actor to look that efficient at martial arts, that when Keanu Reeves did it, and bear in mind, Keanu Reeves is a workhorse, and he trained for 6 months to do what I did in the Matrix, and has continued to train for the rest of his life, and he is an absolute stud. But when he can train Matt Damon up to look a certain degree in the Bourne films and then shake the camera a lot so you can't actually see the mistakes, and people buy that, then it's like, oh, okay, well, anyone can be an action star now. But in the 80s and 90s, you had to be the real deal. You had to be Dolph Lundgren with the physique and the height and the Kyokushin background and look the part. And it didn't matter so much if you couldn't act, because, the actors weren't able to do what he was doing and what Van Damme was doing. But now a lot of actors, they can pull it off. Like Chris Hemsworth, I think, is very compelling as an action star. I loved Extraction.
Oh.
And tip of the hat to him. That I can't wait for the second one, and he's putting the effort in. It takes a lot of effort, and they're doing it. And I think so. That's part of the problem. Well, not the problem. That's part of the reason, and the problem for me. But with Jake Gyllenhaal, look at what he did with Southpaw. I mean, he got into great shape. Screen fighting is a particular thing, and I think Patrick Swayze was so fantastic at it in the original Roadhouse, partly because he was a dancer and understands expressing himself on camera and showing movement. He was able to do the spin kicks quite well and all the rest of it because he came from a dance background. What's Gyllenhaal going to bring to it? I'm happy to. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see what McGregor's doing as well. It'd be fun. But I think that's part of the reason. But why am I not getting the opportunity? I don't know, other than I guess I did too many low budget movies at the beginning of my career, and I got labeled as that guy. And as much as I tried to break out of it, I couldn't, and I remember taking a year off of like low budget movies and saying, right, I'm just going to do studio films now. And, a year later, I was like, oh, I'm broke. I need to do one of these movies again. And it probably wasn't a good one, but there you go. I don't know.
See, movies like Accident Man, well, actually both of them, Accident Man, Hitman's Holiday, Avengement, and then One Shot. I mean, you're definitely doing those films where, these are completely different characters. I mean, even look how you look in Avengement, with the shaved head and the mangled face and the
Look, I'm a trained
metal teeth.
actor.
That's a real character. That's not Scott Adkins. That's a real character right there.
I trained at drama school. I went to the Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Art. I've played, I've done Shakespeare on the boards, all the rest of it. I've known I wanted to do this for a long time. I had a lot of shyness within me when I was younger. And first time the camera was in my face with a crew, I just go to pieces. So that was something I had to overcome. But for me, it's never been a surprise. The first job I ever had before I did Extreme Challenge, the martial arts film in Hong Kong, first job I ever had was a daytime soap opera type thing called Doctors in the UK, straight acting job. So for me, it's always been that way, the two strings to the bow, putting them together. But yeah, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, but like if the Hollywood producers or executives had seen those last few films that I mentioned, like I don't think they'd question the acting. I maybe the only thing that could really get you that big role from a major studio with the proper budget that you deserve, 10 million plus or something.
But it's all changed, hasn't it, David? It's the comic book movies, it's the
It
CGI
has, but everything's
fest.
cyclical. We've been doing these comic book movies for 20 years. I'm telling you, they're gonna, what I believe is gonna happen is we're gonna have these like mid-budget action films again. Because I think Lionsgate, they distribute a lot of horror films that are like kind of like mid-budget, right? They don't even have to have the biggest names. I think Barbarian killed it at the box office. Biggest name in there was Justin Long. It's not like he's an A-lister, like he's semi-known. But again, you don't need like the biggest quote A-list star for these movies to make a lot of money. But it had great production values. It's a great story. So,
Yeah.
I hopefully there'll be a studio that could basically put out these mid-range budget films in the action genre and do something similar to what Lionsgate's doing with these horror movies.
I
We get
think
the
they're
real
going to do
production
it.
values, the real shooting schedules, and then higher quality films, better everything.
I think actually 8711 are doing it. The stunt team behind John Wick, they're producing films now. There's two arms, there's 87 North, there's 8711 Productions. This film called Violent Night is just coming out, which is Father Christmas, killing everyone. So that's done by those guys. They're producing it, these lower sort of like mid-range budget action films. So it's actually happening. Kind of like Day Shift, the one I was in, is a similar sort of thinking behind that. But obviously we had Jamie Foxx, who's a huge star, and gave us a hefty budget. But it is kind of happening. Yeah, and it has come full circle in a way, because those stunt guys that are now becoming directors, that's what they want to do. They want to make these action films, and if they're producing, they're going to produce action films as well.
Yeah, and Chad Stahelski, for example. So you just worked with him in like John Wick 4, right? Is there any talk of you being in like the Highlander remake? Because I know they're making a new Highlander movie, for example.
The only talk is me saying to Chad, "Come on, mate, put me in it."
I'm sure you impressed him in John Wick 4, right?
I like to think so. Yeah, I like to think so.
And I heard
I'm not going to say much about it. Don't let me slip up.
Yeah.
But it's very exciting. You guys are in for a treat.
Oh, I bet. Hey, let me ask you this, and this is what the audience wanted me to ask you. Who are some of your current favorite MMA fighters? And if you had any sparring sessions with known fighters, how'd those sessions go?
Who are my current favorite MMA fighters? Current. Oh, well, my favorite is Leon Edwards, because he's a mate of mine. And we trained.
Okay.
Yeah, he's from Birmingham. He's from Erdington, which is pretty much where I grew up. In fact, the MMA gym that he first started training at, the UTC, used to be Blockbuster Video. And that Blockbuster Video, I worked in that Blockbuster Video for about 3 years.
Wow.
And I used to get all my like 90s martial arts films from it. Anyway, they turned it into an MMA gym. And yeah, I was training there, and Leon came in. I think he was only 16 or whatever. And back then it was like, oh, this kid's good. He's fast. He's powerful. Don't mess with him too much. And it's been great to see his rise to becoming the champ, because it's not an easy one. He wasn't given anything. A little bit like me, maybe in my career. Wasn't given anything for free. Had to work for it. But it tastes so much sweeter once you get there. And I want to see the rematch with Usman in London, because I don't think it was fair that he had to fight Usman at high elevation, because Usman trains in Colorado, which is high elevation. So he had an advantage in that fight, in my opinion. And I think that's why you look at the first round and Leon completely dominated him. And then round 2, 3, 4, 5, until he knocked him out, was a different story. But I think the elevation had a lot to do with it.
Interesting. Yeah. What about not current, but like all-time favorite UFC fighter?
I'm going to go there, even though it's not in vogue to say this, maybe, but in terms of sheer entertainment and excitement, God, Conor McGregor brought it every time because he stacked the cards against him, didn't he? He stacked the odds against him with his mouth and the things that he said. And it was unmissable entertainment because you either wanted him to lose or you wanted him to win. And may the dream continue of this guy rising through the ranks of like coming from the back streets of Dublin and becoming this megastar with all the money and talking all that crap. I do like a bit of the shit talk. I do enjoy it. Probably why I'm a fan of the Oasis Gallagher brothers.
Oh, sure.
I would never do that myself, but when somebody else does it, I quite enjoy it. So very exciting. So yeah, look, if Conor McGregor's going to do another fight, I'm going to watch it. Mm-hmm. We're all going to watch it. So does that mean he's your favorite fighter? Probably, because you're going to watch it.
Yeah, that's funny. He's kind of got the same thing that Floyd Mayweather has, where you want to tune in. Like half the people just want to see him finally lose, and then the other people want to see him continue the streak. But in Conor's case, it's kind of funny because I don't think he's won a fight for years. And most fighters, if they haven't actually won a fight for years, people aren't as interested. But his stuff's going to sell out, so he doesn't even have to win, and people are still going to, just because of the character, right? The persona of him.
Yeah, and look, ultimately, as a fighter, this is my opinion. I'm not a real fighter. I'm a lifelong martial artist, but that's a different type of person that gets in there and does that in front of all those people. At the end of the day, if you can have a whole career and not take that much damage and make that much money, essentially, you've won. That's the way to do it, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because people obviously associate you with Boyka, and people even think that's a real character. I thought you were Russian before I found out you were English. I'm like, oh, he's actually not even Russian.
Because I'm the most complete fighter, so
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Have anybody ever approached you, or were you ever interested in doing one of those, like, quote, celebrity boxing matches? Because those are really popular, and that's where all the money's at, right?
Yeah, nobody's approached me for that. And I don't know if I'd do that. It's been a while since I'm not exactly on top of my sparring, if you know what I mean. It's like it's a younger man's game, but it depends how much money they're offering. maybe I'll just go in there and get knocked out and be a rich man. Who knows?
Would you actually prefer like boxing or maybe karate combat or like UFC? Like if there was an offer out there, what would you prefer it be?
Yeah, karate combat. Yeah,
I kind of figured that because your character was actually watching that in Accident Man 2.
Yeah, man.
Obviously, you're a fan. I figured you put that in.
I am a fan. Yeah, I don't need to be messing with any wrestlers. Forget that. Take the wrestling out. The jiu-jitsu as well. Let's keep it standing and see how I get on.
Yeah, no doubt.